What you put in is what you get out.
Yeah.
As a former programmer, the code that I put in creates the type of output, that the outcome, the results that I receive. So since I'm results driven and I'm a results coach, it's imperative that when I'm having those type of conversations, that the people that are selecting me and I'm selecting them, that they really understand that this isn't an investment for themselves.
Hey there, welcome back to another episode of American Snippets. I'm your co-host, Barb Allen, and today I have the great pleasure of sitting down and sharing with you Shuntella Richardson, who the very first bit of research I did on her, I was like, man, this woman I cannot wait to interview because she has such an in-depth story and background. And again, from the success that you see online and in person, one would never have guessed that somebody has gone through such challenges and hardships to get to where she is today. And Shuntella is an excellent example for anybody looking for some kind of insight, inspiration, actionable steps to take to get past whatever challenge you're facing, to apply to your life personally and professionally. She is a speaker and author. She is a coach teaching people how to get results in their lives personally and professionally. She is the regional director of the Global Women's Club in Chicago, which I love and cannot wait to get into that a little bit. She came from a hard background in a crime-ridden area in Chicago, grew up in not a great area, but managed to get past so much of the hardships that come with that and find her own way of success. She was abducted as a young girl. And we're going to get into all of that now and find out how you overcome that. And she's using that experience to help others now prevent similar tragedies, which is something we love to hear. Sit back, buckle up. I know I rambled a little bit on that intro, but sometimes I do that because I'm a person, I'm a human, and we keep it real here at American Snippets. But there's just so much, and I get all excited like a puppy trying to run so fast on his legs and like falling, right? Like that's sometimes how we roll here. But I did it. Here we are with Shuntella. We're going to turn this over to you to start talking about your story. And first of all, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to come sit down and talk with us.
Well, first and foremost, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. A little bit about my story. I was born in Louisiana to a teenage mom and a teenage father. My mom moved to Chicago to find a better life. And during that time, I stayed a little bit with my grandparents, my grandmother and my grandfather, and which were the parents of my mom. And so she came to Chicago to find a better financial life. And at that time, I was her only child. And during that time, she met a wonderful man that she married, and they then had 3 other children called my siblings. And from there, my parents worked really hard. My father was always the entrepreneurial spirit, and my mom, the sweet Southern woman and very hardworking. And they just really wanted a better life. My father grew up in a background, whereas what we call in Chicago the inner city projects, which is low income housing. And so that's where he grew up. He was the eldest of 7. My mom, on the other hand, is like the youngest of 10. So their worlds are very different, the way they think, things of that nature. And luckily for me, I got to see, even during a time where I think was very difficult as a young person to kind of go through, one thing I can always say about my parents is that they worked hard. And that when they were in their early 20s, they paid cash, hard cash for their home. So my parents never had a mortgage, never had a mortgage. So I thought that was interesting. Of course, at that age, I didn't know anything about a mortgage or anything like that. But as I became older, a young adult, I said, that's fascinating. How do you start off with so much greatness and somehow, some way it tears apart? So long after my parents, separated, but during that time they loved us and they worked hard. And me being the eldest of the four children, I think, like I like to say, I was that test child. So they learned a lot. And I learned a lot being their child. I think my father being a very avid reader. My father collected books, and that was the cornerstone, I honestly believe, of some of who I am today. So I was able to go in his room, and there would be a wall, literally a wall of books. And I could just even now see myself as a young person. I'm running my fingers along the spine of those books, not always understanding the words or the concept, but I blossomed. It made me grow. And one book in particular that really set my little spirit on fire was Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Yeah. How does a girl that age, were you like around 13 when you started to, so, I mean, I'm a mom and my kids are older than 13 now, but I have a 14-year-old stepdaughter and a 12-year-old stepson. And I know a lot of kids those age, they're not picking up Napoleon Hill Think and Grow Rich. They're not picking up those books. They're, on their phones, they're into friends and things that kids are into. What led you to at that age think so seriously? And I know you mentioned you saw your parents buy their house with cash, and that's a big deal. But even the fact that you noticed that, a lot of kids wouldn't necessarily notice that, to the depth that you did. So what led you to pick up that book and be so inspired by it? And how can parents maybe convince their kids to do the same?
Well, that's interesting. I think it was the title.
Yeah.
I judged a book by its cover. Literally, that's what I did.
Okay.
The marketing, the branding word.
Genius.
Like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I was like, Think and Grow Rich. And as a young lady in the inner city, and that was big. I saw a lot on TV that didn't resemble the area in which I lived.
Mhm.
And so you asked the question, like, what kind of led me to read that? One, the title, of course, but I think before that, why was I even looking for a book, right? Like,
Yeah.
why am I in my parents' room looking at
Right.
books? I was a loner. I was abducted as a young girl, and I think hindsight is always 2020. I definitely wouldn't have put these words to it back then, but I shunned away from a lot of socializing. So although I had quote unquote friends and I got out and I played with the kids, I would have to come back and reinforce my skills of socializing. Like that did not come easy for me. And
Yeah.
it's honestly still doesn't. I think that's just something that will be a part of me. And every morning, every day, I have to flip that switch and say, hey, regardless of what I'm thinking, I got to go out and be productive.
Yeah, no doubt. So you were abducted then before even younger, like very young.
Yeah.
How old
Yeah.
were you? Tell
I
us
was
the
about,
story. What happened?
well, I was about 4 years old.
Okay.
As I stated, my parents hardworking. My dad was already at work. My mom had the responsibility of dropping me off at the babysitters. And the babysitters, loving couple, had children of their own. I was the youngest. And at that time, my mom had my sister. And so my sister was just a lap baby at that
Mhm.
time. And here I am, 4 years old, with running with the big kids to the grocery store. And we had done it plenty of times. It wasn't like a big deal. It was a beautiful summer day. I remember it right now. It was a beautiful summer day. I had on little shorts and t-shirt and canvas tie-up shoes. And off to the store we went. And I can clearly recall there were a couple of people just standing out front of the store, just mingling. Uh, didn't seem like anything was wrong to me. And still being that little country girl where when people speak to you, you speak back. I remember the guy saying, good morning. And as we all entered into the store, I remember looking up like, good morning. And we went in the store and got whatever it was, bread, eggs, milk, whatever it was. And as we exited, the big kids went to the right. And I remember pausing as he stepped towards me. He was like, come here. And I remember not even making a full step, but just pausing long enough to make a gap between myself and the others. And before I knew it, he had snatched me. I was a little thing, just a little woman, little woman. I was a little girl. I'm a woman now and still small. But I remember that he grabbed me and off he went. And I can remember people saying like, hey, because by this time the others realized I wasn't in the pack. And they chased him. But as he ran, he's literally on foot running with me. And as he ran, I could hear the voices getting further and further until they faded out.
Wow. So, I mean, what happened?
Well, to make a long story short, I was taken on top of in Chicago, and you live in the U.S. We have these things called viaducts, right? And on top of this viaduct, what I remember was gravel and railroad cars. There were several detached railroad cars. There were no items in it or anything like that. It's as if they'd been abandoned. And there were all these railroad cars, and it was sunny out. It was really warm, and I could hear the city beneath me. I could hear the bustle of Chicago below. But there was no one up there but him and I. And unfortunately, I was sexually assaulted as a child.
Wow.
And so there are things even my adult mind can't wrap my head around.
Right.
Around that incident. And that incident is a part of who I am. And it's a part of who I get to be when I connect with other women.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you get back to your family?
So hours I'm with this man. I mean, hours and hours. And not to be overly descriptive.
Yeah.
But here I am, I'm standing in front of him, and he is squatting. So if you can imagine your buttocks on the heels of your feet. So he's squatting low. So we're almost like eye to eye. I'm standing in between his legs, and he's talking to me, and he's trying to stop me from crying. Mm-hmm. And he's getting madder and madder and madder because I can assume this now, he doesn't want anyone below that just might be walking by to hear a child screaming from above. Mm-hmm. And so I'm standing there and I'm looking at him, and he looks over my left shoulder. By this time, the sun had set. It's dark. In my mind, it could have been the next day. I honestly wouldn't have remembered. But now I know it couldn't have been the next day because the sun didn't come up again. So he's looking over my left shoulder. And all of a sudden, he started backing up. I mean, like in fear, like backing up. And I'm standing because I can't see him, see who's behind me or what he's looking at or anything like that. But he backs up. And as he's backing up, he stands up and he's pulling up his trousers and he's running the opposite direction. And I'm watching him, and I'm slowly gathering my little underwear and my little shorts, trying to put them back on because I'm thinking someone's there. And I'm embarrassed, I'm exposed, I'm naked. And I put my little clothes, as I'm turning, and I don't see anyone. Now I'm standing on top of this viaduct. If you can imagine this viaduct, the sun is now has set. And I'm afraid. I mean, like really afraid in a way that I wasn't afraid when there was at least one person there with me.
Right.
So I'm injured, I'm bleeding, I'm hurt.
Yeah.
I'm afraid, and I'm crying out like because I'm thinking someone's there to help me, but no one came. No one came. Whatever spooked that man, whoever spooked that man, they never showed their face or
Wow.
its face. So here I am on top of this viaduct, and now I have to get down.
Yeah.
I have bruises on my knees today.
Wow.
Because now I'm 4 years old scaling a viaduct wall, concrete viaduct wall.
Wow.
So I get back down to ground level, and I'm crying, I'm dirty, I'm bleeding. And luckily for me, a gentleman stopped because he knew something wasn't right. And he stopped, and cars were coming in and out from under this viaduct. Not a lot of cars. It wasn't heavy traffic, just cars coming back and forth. And the smart guy, he looked at me, he asked me my name, asked me, was I okay? I don't even remember what I said. But he flagged down a United States Postal Service truck, and there was a female driver. And I remember distinctively because she was late, and she said that she was like, "Hey, I'm late getting back to the station. What you need?" And he was like, "Look, can you help her? Like, can you help?" And she looked at me and she said, "Get on, come on." And I remember I was always fascinated with these little postal trucks. And for a moment, I had a moment of happiness as I'm standing on this truck and she's trying to understand where I need to go. And she asked me, did I know the address? I absolutely did not. And she asked enough questions to get me back to the grocery store.
Wow.
And from there, I could point because I didn't
You're
probably know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm 4. I didn't solidly know left from right, north, south, east, or west, but I knew how to get from that grocery store back to the home of the babysitter. And as she approached the street, there were police cars, several, because they were just there. I'm not sure as an adult, even today, why they were there and not looking for me, but they were definitely on the block. And as she entered, I remember being greeted by the police and my babysitter at that time. But that's how I got back to the babysitter house, and I feel and that's how I know there's a God. I don't care what nobody else tells me. That's how I know there's a God.
Yeah. Chase that guy away. Like, that's crazy. Was there ever any justice? Did they ever catch the guy? You know who was?
No. I think my father had a conversation with the police officers. They probably filed a report, but I shut down.
Yeah.
I wouldn't talk about it. I didn't talk openly about this situation for decades.
Yeah, I mean,
so, I didn't have language for it. How do you say I've been sexually assaulted? I didn't even know what sex was.
Right. Wow. Well, thank you. I mean, for sharing that with us. I know we got heavy, like right off the bat. I appreciate that you were willing to do that. And I hope everybody, I hope people who are listening, I know a lot of people have had even similar things, happen in their lives that they still just can't mentally grasp happened. It takes a lot to sometimes kind of break through that whole wall that you just instantly put up to just not go there, right? You compartmentalize those things and you just tuck it away and say, I'm just going to leave that there. And at some point,
I still do.
Yeah. You circle back to it.
Of it. I don't put the emotion to it. I talk about what I recall as the facts.
Yeah. I And so at 4 years old, you discovered that you have a will, though, that you have a strength and you have an ability to survive and get through things, that you are tougher maybe than any 4-year-old would have thought that they could be, right? Because
I don't know if I would have thought that at 4, of course.
Yeah.
By no means. I know I didn't think that at 4. I thought I did something wrong at 4.
Okay.
At 4, I wondered why.
Okay.
Right. But as I am older now and I look at other 4-year-olds or 5-year-olds or 3-year-olds, I can't fathom most of them going through something as horrible as that.
Yeah, no
Or
doubt.
an adult for that matter.
So you're back with your family and you just have to roll on with life, right? Your parents have to go to work, your siblings have to go to school, you have to go back to the babysitter. Like,
well, the babysitter, I never went back there.
You never went back there?
I've never seen that family again in that capacity.
Yeah.
Never again. And so my parents didn't think it was a good idea.
Yeah.
And I can understand that.
Right. Their instinct is to hold you close and protect you. So moving through childhood and all that, you've tucked that away in your corner, and then you start paying attention, or maybe you were already paying attention and you realize, hey, my parents are tough, man, and they're doing some things right. And you find yourself reading Napoleon Hill's book at 13 years old.
I believe it saved my life. I really do in the weirdest way. I think when you have such a travesty at such a young age, especially those developing years, and like I said, I became a hider. I want to go play. I don't know if it's safe to play. I started having horrible nightmares. I had nightmares for many years. During that process, I didn't have therapy. I didn't talk about it. My mom was pregnant with the 3rd child, which was my first brother. And so during the time, my mom wasn't informed. So I didn't even have the hug of a mother.
Your mother never knew what happened?
Not initially, no.
Wow.
Not initially. So because she had a high-risk pregnancy. So some adult thought that was a good idea. Some adult thought it was in the best interest of my mom and the high-risk child. Not let her know that her 4-year-old daughter was abducted and sexually assaulted.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, I'm like, they thought that was a good, like somebody thought that was a good idea.
So you just couldn't tell your mom, hey, I was taken.
I don't think I would have even, because again, I thought I did something wrong.
Yeah.
So as a child, here you are, you think you did something wrong. My mom doesn't know to even have the conversation.
Yeah.
And my father was the one that pretty much, honestly, was the one like, hey, you don't talk to strangers. You don't do this. You don't do that. And I think in his defense, he didn't know how to handle that. He didn't know how to handle emotionally that a child had been abducted. I think he felt like partially responsible in his own fatherly way because he wasn't there to protect me in some way. And at the same time, he wanted to protect his unborn child because my mom was having a really difficult time. And I think they thought that eventually I would talk about it, and I just didn't.
You just didn't.
Up until I was a teenager with my mom. When my mom is when, and she said, no, they eventually told me. But I didn't know until I was in high school that she had ever been informed one way or the other.
Wow, that's a lot. That's a lot. And we're just like touching the corner of, of the cover of your story there. That's just a lot. But so then now you're a teenager, you're starting to read these books, you're starting to think big, you're starting to make these plans for yourself. And then at some point you have this conversation with your mom and your dad, and I don't know, does that heal? Does that hurt? Does it open, does,
With the conversation, I think
yeah,
it was just always on my mind.
yeah.
I did have a conversation with my dad about it again up until about 4 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, because I knew that he knew, and I I didn't blame him that I was abducted, but I blamed him for how I felt after
Right.
the abduction.
Right.
Like I didn't feel nurtured or loved, and that was something I needed to have a conversation with him so that I could have some closure
Right.
around his impact on me for the next several years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. So getting through, I mean, you were going to school this whole time. You went through high school, made it through high school. And then after high school, what comes next for you?
Well, after high school, I went to university. I knew it's interesting. As a kid, I was a dreamer. I've always been this big dreamer. I wanted to be an astronaut and travel in space and see stars and do those type of things. And I didn't know any astronauts, so that was told to me like my senior year in high school, and they just like, you might want to do something more practical. And so I remember distinctively looking in one of those career books. I
Oh,
don't
yeah.
even.
Yeah. That's what we had back then.
Yeah.
Here's 30 choices.
Yes. I'm so happy
Map
somebody.
out your life. Yes.
Yes, someone else remembers those.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
look at this career book, and I recall like chief executive officer being number one, and number two was probably a surgeon, and three and four, and come on down. And finally, I see pharmacists. So, that's a decent salary. It sounds reasonable, and that's how I chose what my major would be in school, literally based off of salary.
Yeah.
And not just that, what I thought I could become. So I didn't at that time. I didn't even know what a CEO was. So they were just words to me. Even after reading books, I didn't have anything to attach it to because I didn't know any chief
Right.
executive officers. They were just empty words to me. And so I didn't know personally any surgeons or anything like that, anesthesiologists, anything like that. I didn't know any of those. And so when I got to pharmacist, I said, okay, I can do that. And I went to school and I studied really, really hard. And at that same time, the computer was making its turn around the corner, and my father just happened to have um, a physical computer in the home when I was actually in high school. I was the only one that I knew of my peers that had a computer in the house, and I was drawn to it. I was always capable with utilizing a computer, but at that time I didn't see a career
Right.
in computer science. I didn't even know that there was such a thing. And so I've continued through pharmacy, and then always fixing stuff. I remember at that time they had a dot matrix printer to print.
Oh,
The,
yeah. I remember those things
the,
with the like sheets that tear off on the side, the little
yes, yes, we had those for all sorts of things. And then you had the label maker,
Yeah.
and the setup system would always go down. But I was the one like, don't worry, let me go fix it. And although those were small things to me, to the pharmacy section, that was big. So
Yeah.
I transferred from that arena into the computer science arena, where I stayed for well over 2 decades.
How was it then to grow your career in that industry? That's a competitive industry, and am I right in saying it's male dominated?
Yes.
Yeah.
Not, yeah. But I didn't know that.
Right. Yeah. You had no idea right. So
Yeah.
did that help? Then you just went about like not even paying attention to all that. Like there was no noise made about it. So you just did your thing and
Well,
made your way.
when I first started in that industry, I was promised a certain type of role, and I ended up a backup receptionist.
Hmm.
And I just was like, okay, well, I'll be the backup receptionist. But in the meantime, I just honed in on my computer skills, went back to school, um, got another degree, and just did what I thought was best. And in the meantime, I worked in the sales office as support pretty much. And in that support capacity, I did minor computer related work. But that little computer related work was big to that sales office. And before I knew it, the manager, her name is Debbie Bronji. Wherever Debbie is in this world, thank you, because she helped make that difference, and she recommended me for a position in what we call corporate, which would have been our corporate headquarters. And that's how that opportunity opened the door for me. And at that time, laptops were just becoming the big
Right.
thing. And I worked doing laptop installations and training and development, training salespeople. And that's where I started.
So at some point, I mean, you spent 20 plus years in that sector and then
Yes,
decided to leave. Right. And
yes.
now you're CEO of a company yourself.
Yes. Well, and I was CEO before I left corporate America.
Excellent.
Uh, yeah, I think what I learned, and I could afford to do that.
Yeah.
I didn't want to wait until I left corporate. I think honestly, now again, looking back at everything, corporate was a great launch pad for me to develop certain skills. It paid for so much training and development. I worked for wonderful companies, and I will always be thankful for that. I just happened to pick great companies that really took care of their employees, in my opinion. They took care of me financially, educationally, things of that nature. And I took that and I built on it, starting with something as small as training other men computer skills, then real estate, then brick and mortar Liberty Tax Service, which is a tax time in the United States now. So
Hmm.
you'll see those Liberty Tax Service waivers out there. So those were the things that I did becoming this entrepreneurial. And I think a lot of it, honestly, was trial and error. I didn't have all the answers, but I had the will.
That's a
And
key
then
point you made there, that you don't have all the answers, but you have the will. So, I mean, you had setbacks and mistakes, and were you
several.
ever tempted? Right. And some of them, I imagine, if you're anything like, the rest of the world, some of them hurt a little more than others and they're hard to get back up on. But I think you just nailed the key point there. If you have the will to keep getting back up and do it. And some people say to me like, Barb, oh my gosh, you're trying this, you try that. Like, and then they see, I make mistakes, we're struggling to build this or build that. People are like, why do you do it? I'm like, look, I'd rather crash and burn like
Yes.
over and over than like never try or just stay still. Obviously, at some point you get tired of burning and crashing. At some point, like
Well,
you need to have some kind of success.
you learn.
But
You learn to
yeah.
learn, right?
Yeah, yeah. You don't want to like you don't want that to be your entire life story. It's just all the
Yes.
burns, right? But
Yes.
but even so, if that's the case, I think just there are some people are happy, right? Who could stay in corporate forever and never do anything else. They like knowing where they're going to be every Tuesday at 10 o'clock for the next 25 years. They like knowing they're 2 weeks. It's comforting to them. They can plan outside their,
Mhm.
they can structure their lives and plan things and know, barring any acts of God or unforeseen circumstances that hit all of us at some point, barring illness or tragedy, they know where they're going to be and they know what their income's going to be and they know this and they know that, assuming nothing goes wrong, right?
Predictable.
Yeah. And some people like that's where they thrive and they shine and that's the happiest for them. Right. Sometimes I'm a little jealous of those people. I'm like, man, that's like a little simpler, right? Like, why couldn't that be me? Like, why do I do this to myself? Right. But you live out there and you know it. And now you have results to success
Yes.
is your company. Tell us about that. What do? You coach, you train people how to build their own success. You work with them personally and professionally. Do you work with individuals or do you go into companies?
Both. Yes,
Yeah.
I do. I do all those things. results to success, as I like to say, I bridge the gap between dreamers and their dreams. I just get to do it in heels, right? And I love meeting people where they are, like right where they are, and find those pain points and get them on the other side of those pain points. And something you said earlier, i- looking at people from the outside, you don't necessarily know what's on the inside. And
Right.
I think that's my history is my best weapon, because many women look at me on the outside and think I just have it all together. I had whatever life they've created in their minds.
Right.
And I'm like, well, some of that may be true, but it's probably a very small portion. And when it's appropriate, I will share some of the other
Right.
parts.
Right.
In most cases, they're shocked. They're like, "Wow, you went through a divorce, or you lost your business, or whatever it is." Um, and I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, that happened, and it can still happen to you, and
Yes.
it's okay.
Yeah.
It's all
Those are all
right."
key points. All key points. You went
Yeah.
through, so you just said you lost a business and you went through a divorce and then you have
Yes.
another one. Yeah. Like, those are hard things, right? Literally
Especially
life changing
yeah,
events.
you work hard for those things. You
Yeah.
work hard for that marriage. You work hard to build a business. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now, so what is a typical person that would contact you? Like on any given day, you have an inquiry on your site or you have a call from your assistant or whatever. What's a typical inquiry you get for somebody looking for your guidance and insight?
Well, interestingly, I find it it's usually someone who's extremely successful in their own right. However, she or he will find themselves stuck, meaning that they've built a life and they still somehow feel that they haven't made it.
Yeah.
And what I it's interesting. A lot of us take a path, and I did it too. Take a path that seems right, meaning our parents want us to do it. Auntie Marge, who left me X amount of money in inheritance, wants me to grow up to be a doctor, so I'm
Right.
going to be a doctor. And that sounds great until you're living in that life that you didn't create for yourself, that you allowed others to create on your behalf, and you
Right.
just inserted yourself. And so what I find is that I have several people that will come to me who have somehow cocooned themselves in a life that they didn't create, and they want out. They want out the cocoon and be a butterfly, and they don't necessarily know how. And that's what I help them with.
That's pretty cool. That's what we talk about a lot here. And that's one reason we do what we do, right? Is because we got, there's so, I'm sure you are exposed to it too, or hear all the negativity going on in this country. Like it seems like every day in the media, the news, online, social platforms, there's people complaining, talking about how doomed this country is, how terrible the people in this country are, depending on which person you are, the other side, right? And it's depressing and overwhelming, but there's so many paths. And we think, and again, it's why we're doing what we're doing. I think a lot of the anger in this country is based out of people's own lack of fulfillment in their own lives. It's like misplaced unfulfillment and it's much easier to jump on the wagon and be like, oh, let me just vent all of my frustration and rage here at these people on the other political party, or the person in the White House, or whatever it is, instead of looking inside and addressing.
As this year.
And so we feel like if we can just share more stories of people like you and examples and paths and avenues, maybe for every episode we do, if one person connects with our guests and says, hey, I'm going to follow this person and connect and find a way to focus less on all that and more on myself, we think it'll grow the family, grow the community, grow the country, bit by bit. Right. So we love that you're doing exactly that. For you right there, what you just said is like proof of concept for us. So that's why I rambled a little. I'm like, I know, could people, around me, like, you're kind of crazy. It's not a widely accepted way of thinking,
No,
right? We're
no,
the
not
minority voice.
always.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. It's the
I
one
have,
person. Yeah.
yes, go ahead.
I was to say it's the one person you can connect with, right? That
Yeah,
does come to you.
that
You have enough.
makes the difference.
Yeah.
That one person, like connecting with you.
Yeah.
You're my one person
Yeah.
this morning that I
Yeah.
know gets it.
Yeah. No, that's great. So what is the average, like say for an individual, do you have like a time span that I have a 6-month
Mhm.
process we're going to walk you through, or, here's first 10 days, what is your app? What's your procedure, your process in general? But, and I know
It
it's probably changes for everybody, but
it
some
depends on
examples.
where they exactly. It
Yeah.
depends on where they are, what it is that they desire their
Yeah.
outcome to be. And so some people, I think, visualize themselves doing less work than needed, and so or they overshoot it by months. So so I have packages, anything from 90 days. Hey, let's just start at a 90-day and work on 1 quarter and work backwards. Let's reverse engineer and get you to, here are the steps. Let's work through that.
Yeah.
And then I have people who are like, well, that doesn't sound like enough time. I feel like I need more time, and they commit for 10 months. I only will do up to 10 months at a time. And
Right.
when I say 10 months, meaning we may have a conversation, meet face to face or over Zoom or anything like that, twice a month. And
Right.
some people, they want to connect, even if it's for 15 minutes every week. So I make it work for my clients.
That's awesome. And you have been able to create a successful business doing that, which is
Yes,
so cool. It is so cool. It's just, again, it's using your past experience, everything you went through professionally to reach back and help other people get where they want to be, which is
yes.
great. And you are now regional director of the Global Women's Club in Chicago, which I love too. As we talked about, man, it has been very hard for us to connect with women, successful
Mhm.
women. They don't want to, I don't know. I don't know what the problem is. I don't know if it's like what we're doing, whatever, but it's been way easier for us to connect with men, and very successful men, and genuine military heroes, law enforcement heroes, people who have huge followings, who charge thousands of dollars for an hour of their time, will sit down with us and share. But for some reason, it's harder for us to connect with the women. So the fact that you are in a giant organization centered on women, I love. I love that there's actually women connecting with other women out
Yeah.
there and
We
working to
I
lift
love
each
it.
other up. Yeah. Talk about the Global Women Club. Quickly give a just explanation of what it is and what you all do and why it matters.
Well, Global Woman was founded by Marella Sula, who is currently living in London by way of Albania. And so she had her own story. She has her own story,
Yeah.
and which led her to pretty much very little income, a young son in London. And so she created a space for women like herself. Started as Migrant Woman, and then that evolved into Global Woman. Global Woman then evolved into adding clubs. It just so happened I met Morella in 2016. And at that time, the club experience didn't exist at all. I don't even think it was a thought of hers. And I met her in London, and the rest is history in regards to our relationship. But when she came to Chicago in 2017, she had just probably months before had a meeting in London with a group of women, about 35, 40 women. And what she realized was that once brought under one roof with a few snacks, coffee, tea, water, juice, that those women opened up and they shared, and they got to the rawness of what it is that we as women, how we connect. And from that, that's how the club started. And so when she came to Chicago for a business meeting, she said, Shuntella, she said, who do I know? This is what I love about Morella. She said, who do I know in Chicago? So people on social media, this person, that person, Shuntella. She's like, that's right, Shuntella's in Chicago. So she reached out to me via social media and said, Shuntella, I'm coming to Chicago. Can you get about 35, 40 women in a room? I said, absolutely. Tell me when. And that's how Global Women Club Chicago emerged from that meeting. And for the last couple of years, it's been a phenomenal journey. I've met so many fabulous women. And for the members of our clubs, they get to build confidence, they build relationships, collaboration,
Mhm.
and they get to see themselves in a way that they may have envisioned, but they get to actually do it out loud in our platform once a month. So Global Woman is a business networking club for professional and business women that enables them to build their confidence and their speaking skills. It gives them a platform to share.
Yeah, which is huge and great because a lot of what determines where you go and what you do in life is your circle, the people you surround yourself with. We talk a lot about the power of proximity and
Yes.
really,
Who are your fives? Right.
yeah, like culling
Yes.
the herd around you and really being very selective about the people you surround yourself with. And it's one thing to go out with friends that you've had forever and have a few beers or chill out or do something fun. But if those are the only people you hang out with and those are the only thing you ever do, then those are the only people you will ever hang out with and those are the only things you will ever do, right? So if you want to mix it up and you want to try new things and really push yourself and find new levels of success, you have to surround yourself with people who want and think do the same thing, and not necessarily in an adversarial position either, but surrounding yourself with people who are going to work together. So it's like a mastermind, really. What you're talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think one, your network
yeah,
is to your net worth,
right,
and vice versa. If you
right,
really want to increase your income, increase the value of those that are around you.
right,
That's important.
yeah,
Like I tell people, I said, I prefer, even when I'm looking at my daughter Janelle, she's 14, and the school system that she's in, I chose that school system and the way she's being taught, not because it's one of the better school systems, but because of the network that this 14-year-old is now emerging herself in now.
perfect,
So that
perfect.
maybe one day in the future, because my parents we didn't think like that.
No,
If I
yeah,
laid off from a job any day, the odds were back in the day, I knew no one I could go ask for help.
right, right.
Period. And so my whole mindset around network is very, very different. But yeah,
Yeah, that's huge and important. So, and you mentioned this woman, Debbie, who kind of took her time and reached out to help you and guide you. So that's, a mentor in your life that made
I
a,
know it.
a big difference. Yeah. And didn't even know it. Right. So I wanted to touch on that too, because a lot of times people think like in their own lives or the families, there's no one that's going to mentor them or guide them, but you can find a mentor. And the power of finding a right mentor, even if it's somebody you follow online who doesn't know they're your mentor, right? You absorb their content or join a club, Global Women's Club. I'm sure your members have found mentors in each other as well and help each other. That's invaluable, right? Would you say, I mean, it's what if somebody comes to you and says, look, I'd like to do this, but I don't really want to spend the money on doing that. Do you have an answer for them? What you get in return for that investment?
For joining the club, you
Yeah,
meaning, or
or coaching with you, or
oh, period.
yeah,
I think it's what you put in is what you get out.
yeah,
As a former programmer, the code that I put in creates the type of output, that the outcome, the results that I receive. So since I'm results driven and I'm a results coach, it's imperative that when I'm having those type of conversations, that the people that are selecting me and I'm selecting them, that they really understand that this isn't an investment for themselves,
hmm,
and that you're going to have some skin in the game.
yes,
So if you really want the type of outcomes, the type of life that you dream about, that you desire, that you feel, that you could taste, you're going to have to invest the time, the effort, the sacrifice, and the financial commitment.
Yeah. It's true. And it's a hard lesson to learn. But once you start doing it and you start going to these events and getting that coaching and meeting these people, you quickly start to realize you can
Yeah.
change. And there's really no end to it. No matter how successful you get, I think you can always continue to
Yes.
invest that back in yourself, invest in that one-on-one coaching, invest in coming to meet and mentor, invest in that networking club, the resource club, the mastermind, go to that event or whatever it is. But I think that's something that is super important. I love hearing that, you're out there doing that. I have a friend I was just talking to who's at a whole new turning point in her life too. And because we're in New York, next week or the week after, there's Global Women's Club in New York, and we're going to go check out that meeting. And
Hello, send my love.
yeah, I will. I got to meet Marilla when we both spoke at an event. And she's, I couldn't believe it. I was like, oh my gosh, the founder of the Global Women's Club, like, actually came up and spoke with me and was chatting with me. I'm like, oh, that was, it was cool. Yeah.
That's how we all are.
Yeah. Yeah.
She has that whole funnel effect from
Yeah.
top. So
Yeah.
she has an eye for all of the directors. And something else you just said, like you said, I'm going to the New York meeting soon. And I'm like, say hi to Mindy.
Yeah.
As a woman, I feel special that I can go to different parts of the world and know that there's someone that I might know,
Yeah. That's
or
cool.
even if I don't know them personally, that I can be connected to through this network. So I never had to feel like a stranger. I never had to feel alone when I traveled to foreign parts of the world. Let it be Albania, Kosovo. I was just there this summer, and I felt like I was family.
That's great. That's great. All right. So here at American Snippets, what we talk about, and I touched on that quickly before, why we started it and what we do, but we, we center a lot on the American dream, which you are an example of. You've built your own version of the American dream. And patriotism is important to us. Obviously, my husband died in Iraq, and we are very tied into the military community. So patriotism is important to us as a unifying force. But the American dream is part of that. And for me, when I see people going out there and really taking advantage of everything that is in this country, no matter their circumstances, no matter what they have to fight, there are a lot of great countries out there. I don't know that there's another country that you could create this form of success doing exactly what you're doing, in the way that you're doing it. We know the American dream is unique to everybody. There's not one cookie cutter definition of it. Right. So we like to ask each guest, what does the American dream mean for you?
Exactly you tied right into it. The segue for me is success for me, it changes. The success I wanted at 4 years old was to be at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
The success in high school was to graduate and go to a university. And each time I obtain a goal, I fulfill it, my success radar and meter, that needle changes some. But at this point in my life, my goal is to touch, move, and inspire women all over the world. And to pour into them, to feed them with their own dreams and visions and get the outcome, the results that they want, period. Like that's what I'm doing today. And I'm so elated that I can do that I'm entrusted with that.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much. And if people want to find you online or connect with you, find out about working with you, find out about the Global Women's Club, where can they go to connect with you personally?
Let's see. First of all, for those who are local, you can connect with me on February 23rd. We are having a Global Woman Club event here in Chicago. As a matter of fact, our founder, Marella Sulula, will be coming to Chicago. So don't miss that if you can be here. But also, you can find me at ShuntellaRichardson.com. I'm all over social media. You can find me, as you stated. You could Google me, Instagram, as I say, even TikTok. So, but I can be found throughout any of those sources, or go to globalwoman.co, because they're not .com, globalwoman.co, and you'll find out about Global Woman and more about me. Yeah, but yeah, these days it's just like you're everywhere.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to sit down and talk with us and share your insight with our community. I would highly recommend anyone, especially if you're in the Chicago area, want to meet Shuntella, go on out there February 23rd, hop on. Where's the meeting going to be?
It's on Sunday, February 23rd. It will be held at the historic building called the Chicago Firehouse Restaurant.
All right, perfect. Hop on out there if you're in Chicago. If you're in New York and you're in the city, I think on the 19th, I might bump into you at a Global Ones Club meeting because I think
Yeah,
it's time. I've been trying to get there since I met Morella, and I think the universe is leading me there next week. So we'll see. But thank you so much again for taking the time to sit down with us.
thank you.